An apartment complex called Identity Dinkytown near the University of Minnesota was expected to open at the end of August, before classes began. Construction remains ongoing, and students who signed leases to live in the new building have been left with limited options as they begin their studies. Several students recently appeared before the Senate's Higher Education and Housing and Homelessness Prevention Committees to describe their plight.
The balance of power in off-campus student housing has always favored the landlord, especially because these are often first-time renters who are just hoping for a smooth transition to college and a safe space throughout the school year. Identity used their position as a landlord in this scenario to engage in predatory practices. The taking of rent before notifying the tenants that the building would not be ready was outrageous, especially because of how late in the summer students were being informed.
I knew when I signed this lease that it was going to be extremely expensive, but I wanted to live with my best friends in a new building with the amenities that they promised. I diligently worked this entire summer to save up so I could afford to live here, and now this situation has arisen. The money I saved up is now going towards paying for parking ramps, metered parking, gas, and food.
The construction delays may have been unpreventable, but I would like to see more accountability being taken and honesty throughout the process. Students living at the Identity should have the opportunity to get out of their lease, or rent should be reduced significantly. Paying some of the top rates for an apartment that is half finished with no amenities does not make any sense to me.
Everyone we spoke to was made aware that my family lived nowhere near Minneapolis and we were uncomfortable with the housing accommodations provided to me. Each time we were met with an "I understand, but," and "there's nothing we can do."
Joining me in the studio to talk more about the Identity Dinkytown apartment complex and other housing issues is the chair of the Senate Housing and Homelessness Prevention Committee, Senator Lindsey Port. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Shannon.
You and Senator Omar Fateh, the chair of the Senate Higher Education Committee, convened a meeting recently to delve into the matter of the Dinkytown apartment complex. What did you take away from that meeting?
You know, the stories that the students shared were so impactful because I think you can think about it in an academic way, but when you hear about the real life struggles of trying to move into your apartment the first week of school and suddenly having no place to live, those impacts were immediate. They require an immediate solution. And I think we also sort of, as we delved into it more, realized that this has some broader implications rather than just this identity building.
And we'll get to the broader implications in a moment, but considering first that these students were left without a place to live, vague answers as to when their apartments might become available, should the students have the option to get out of their lease?
I think absolutely. When you sign a contract with someone, you are both responsible for holding your end of that contract up. And this is sort of one area of the law where that's not necessarily true. The landlords are not providing what they said, a place to live with the amenities, with close to campus, all of those. They're not meeting that requirement of their contract. The students should absolutely be able to get out of those contracts.
And so then to go to the broader implications, is this simply a series of unfortunate events, or it sounds like you think it points to broader problems, and what might those be?
Yeah, I think when we think about the balance of power between renters and landlords, landlord-tenant law really does favor landlords in a lot of ways. We made some great changes to it last year, but there are bigger implications. Most of our landlord-tenant law was written 50, 60, 70 years ago. Things have changed since then. Mail is not now the only way you can get communications. Updating some of the technology, the ways that people communicate, and also understanding that really both sides should have equal rights and protections under the law. So we're taking a look at sort of those broader implications and seeing if there are either minor tweaks that we need to make, like in this case, if you're not holding up your end of the lease as a landlord, people should be able to get out of that lease without having to take you to court. But also sort of, do we need just a broader rewriting of this area of law, an updating, if you will?
So a few of the changes that will become effective January 1st that were enacted in the last legislative session include a minimum temperature requirement of 68 degrees from October 1 to April 30th. Landlords must disclose all fees, in terms of the price that the rent is, and they also must wait until 6 months before a lease is to expire before they can ask whether the person intends to renew. So you do say that there's more that should be done. Can you be more specific? There is, as you said, a power imbalance. And I know from the testimony, these students, because they are students, are not likely to take legal action. Should there be an avenue that doesn't involve legal action?
Yeah, I think so. You know, in a case like this, where it's clear that one end of the lease isn't being held up, there should be an easier mechanism to just say, look, you're not meeting this. Here's my documentation that you're not meeting it. I would like out of my lease. And that should be a pretty simple process. We also want to take a look this year at source of income requirements. Should it matter whether you're getting your money to pay rent partially from a voucher? Should it matter if you're on Social Security disability, things like that? Or if you can pay the rent, that should be sort of the end of the equation. So we're taking a look at that. It's something that's passed in other states and that our Department of Human Rights is really interested in as well.
So in current law, it is possible for the property owner to essentially discriminate based on the form of income that the potential tenant has?
Exactly, which, you know, if they can even put in, we don't accept vouchers. So if you accept vouchers, no matter how good the rest of your application is, no matter how much of a star tenant you are, you won't even get an option in some cases to have an interview for that apartment or to see it and have your application go through the process.
The Wall Street Journal last week published an article about why baby boomers are sliding into homelessness nationally. Here in Minnesota, Minnesota Public Radio did a story on the continued high rate of eviction filings across the state, noting causes like inflation and inadequate wages. Both articles suggest that things like car repairs or sudden medical expenses are the causes for putting people in a state of being unhoused. How would you like to see this addressed?
You know, I think we have to look at the whole spectrum and have to include housing as we think about just basic living needs. Wages have not gone up in the same way that housing has. Housing has gotten significantly more expensive over the last 30 years. And there's really no way for the average renter or homeowner to keep up with that on current wages. That often hasn't been a part of the conversation. Housing has sort of been kept over in its own bucket. And, you know, people are like, oh yeah, rents are going up. That's just life. But when we look at why, and is there a role that government needs to play in making sure that we are producing enough subsidized housing that actually meets the needs of people, and that housing is safe, affordable, that it's climate friendly, economically feasible for families, that it fits the folks who need it. You know, we have a large immigrant population here in Minnesota that has need for larger apartments or homes because they live multi-generationally. That's a thing we should be taking into account as we're investing, this $1 billion that we put into it. But I think the other piece is not looking at folks who are on the brink of becoming unhoused or near a housing crisis as sort of like, oh, they must have done something, they must have gotten themselves into a hole. It is really something that touches all walks of life, all age groups. We're seeing it, as you said, expand in baby boomers now, but there are too many kids in Minnesota who don't have a place to live. There are too many seniors, veterans. It really does span all of our residents, and it's something we need to take seriously.
In a similar vein then, today, Axios reported on a decision in Dakota County to stop a permanent homeless shelter in the suburbs there, citing pushback from residents. Unhoused people have tended to congregate in Minneapolis and St. Paul, but suburban areas are starting to see a greater influx of unhoused people. Record funding was passed, as you mentioned, last session to address some of these concerns. But if residents themselves don't support these additional services, then what is the next step?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge concern. We have to get past that point. And I think it really starts all with conversations. We really tried to focus in my committee this last year on the humanity of what housing crises look like, the families that are facing these crises. It's easy to think of a stereotype, whether you're talking about people who are unhoused or, as I talked about a lot this last year, people who use cannabis. It's really easy to have sort of a stereotype that you just like write off as someone else. The more we tell the real stories of how Minnesotans are existing and living and getting to these crisis points, the more it is easy to understand that you want your community to be a place where there's a solution for that, an answer for that. And as we've looked across the country at places that really have invested, and actually across the world, that have invested in ending homelessness, it is the most financially feasible option. It is less expensive than keeping people on social services and emergency services. It lowers the cost of healthcare. It creates better economic outcomes for jobs and education. It really is the solution that is best for all of our communities. It's going to take time, and hearing stories, learning about each other, and continuing to have these conversations to make those changes, but I'm really hopeful we'll get there.
So briefly before we go, can you preview one thing that you know you will tackle next legislative session?
Absolutely. My vice chair, Senator Liz Bolden, is carrying the bill to ban corporate ownership of single-family homes. We really saw a lot of hedge funds buying up single-family homes over the pandemic and in the years since. And that keeps them from folks who now, through our down payment assistance, would be able to buy those homes. We want to make sure they stay in the hands of Minnesotans, so that'll be top of our list.
Senator Lindsey Port, it's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Shannon.